All right. Now, excuse me, there was a sort of a technical difficulty before, but here we go. Now we're learning the Dvar Malchut of the Rebbe. We learned this last year, but it's always interesting and brand new every year. And this is Parshat Ba'alotcha. This week. Now, it's a very interesting thing in this week's Torah portion, and that is that some people say that in this week's Torah portion, the Torah, this week's Torah portion, it has one full book of the Torah is in this portion. One full book of the Torah is in this week's portion, and it only has just a couple of sentences in it. And it says like this. It's the sixth reading that we read in this week's Torah portion. The sixth, it's divided up. The Torah reading is divided up into six divisions. Divided into seven divisions. According to that, that's how many people we call up on Shabbat for the reading. So 7 divisions. And the sixth of them goes like this. Vayehi bin Tzor Aaron vayom Moshiach humu Hashem yefutzu ovecha v'yinusu misanecha mipenecha ubenucho yomar shuva Hashem rivot alfei Yisrael. So there's basically 2 sentences here. 2 sentences. These 2 sentences, according to some opinions, constitute one full book of the Torah. One full book of the Torah. So if so, it comes out that up to this was one book. Right? So it comes out, I'm saying, that the book of Numbers is really divided into 3 books. 3 books. So we have the 5 books of Moses, are not the 5 books of Moses. The 5 books of Moses, it should be the 7 books of Moses. Really? 7 books of Moses. What are the 7 books of Moses? Up to the book of Deuteronomy. I'm saying up to the book of Numbers. Up to the book of Numbers. That's 3 books. Right? Breshit, Shmot, and Vayikra. Then the beginning of the book of Numbers up to these 2 sentences, that's 1 book. These 2 sentences are another book. And from these 2 sentences to the end of the book is another book. So this one book itself is 3 books. So instead of 5 books, you got 7 books. Okay, we're going to talk about what is the implication of this and what exactly it means. Of course, it's not, this is just an idea, right? This is just a very, very, genuine and valid opinion, but it's not the way we look at things. Let's go. But Parshat Ba'alotcha and Ba'alotcha, there is a novelty in regarding to the other books of the Torah. In the book of Deuteronomy, in the book of Numbers, there is something unique in regarding to all the other Torah readings in the Torah. And that is, it says in the Gemara, Parshat Vayehi bin Tzor Aaron, these 2 sentences I just read to you, Sefer Chashuv Hu B'Fnei Atzmo. It is considered to be a book on its own. Where does it say this? It says in the Talmud, in Shabbat. And other places also, but the Talmud in Shabbat. And so we have 2 sentences here in the middle of this week's Torah portion that says that is one book of the Torah itself. Why does it say that? That's the fact. East of Gemara, it says, these 2 sentences, right, which are the beginning of the 6th reading, this is a book on its own. According to this, Nimsa comes out, Kesha Drasha, which is brought in the Gemara, it says Chatzva Amudei Shiva. It says it comes from, it says that it is hewn out from 7 pillars. What does this mean? That there are 7 books of the Torah. not 5. Kaven since Parshazu, since Sora is a book in its own, so Nimsa so comes out that before Shalamayla Sefer Latzmo, Shalamata Sefer Latzmo, all those sentences, the paragraphs of this book of Numbers that come before these two sentences, that's a book in itself, and all the sentences and paragraphs that come after it is another book in itself. So it comes out that there is Nimsa Sefer Vayadaber, Sefer Bamidbar is divided into 3 books. The Mela, so automatically, if so, Yeshnam Shiva Sefer Torah, there's 7 books of Moses. So instead of calling it a Pentateuch, you'll have to call it the Septateuch or something. Arbat Sforim, 4 books, Breshit, Shmot, Vayikra, and Dvorim. That's 4 books. And the book of Numbers is divided into 3, so you get 7 altogether. According to this, Achidush, the Parshas Balotcha, the novelty of this week's Torah portion that we're reading now, is the Parshas Zu, that in this is included these 3 books, the end of the previous book, right? The book of Numbers is divided into 3. So the end of the first book is in this Torah portion, up to these words of Vayi bin Sora. Then by those 2 sentences, Vayi bin Sora, those 2 sentences, that's another book. And from those 2 sentences on is the 3rd book, the beginning of the 3rd book of Numbers. A little bit of it is before this by Ibn Sora, and some of it is after. If so, there's many things we have to understand. Okay, just in order to understand something, the Torah was given not just as a religious book or as a how do you say, an academic book, a history book, right? The Jewish people have actually been reading from this book, the same book for 3,300 years. Is it really the same book? Has it been changed? Who has changed it? We see this, and then all the historians and the literature experts and the pundits and whatever called, they're all make a living from it. They make a living, right? But is it the same Bible? Has it been changed? Who changed it? Are there several authors? And we see that there's several creators of the world, and etc. And so the same thing here, right? Maybe you could say the Torah, very interesting piece of literature, perhaps the oldest, most organized piece of literature in the history of the world, and etc. etc. Okay, you can say all those things, but that's not the point. The point of the Torah is that it's given by God Himself, the creator of the world, as the instruction of what to do with the world, or more exactly, what to do with our lives. Davar Tamua says it's a big wonder. Just one second, I want to close this. Excuse me. Oh. Number 1, Davar Tamua, 3 things. Number 1, Davar Tamua, this is a very, very strange thing. Alpia Chaluka, the Sheva Sifrei Torah, if you divide it up that there is 7 books of the Torah, Nimso comes out that this 6th book, namely the end portion of the book of Numbers, which that comes out to be the 6th book of the Torah, right? There's 7 books. And that comes after Vayehi bin Sora, our own. This begins Vayiham Miton Anrim. It begins with a bad thing. The Jewish people were complaining to God. In Yadilti Ratzoy, something which is negative, She'evi, the Totzot Shlil, that became a bad thing, says that there was a fire burned among the Jewish people. And a continuation, Miriam, afterwards it says that Miriam sinned. And afterwards it says about the sin of, next week is going to be the sin of the spies. So again, let's have a look at this. What's it say? Saying that these 2 sentences about when the ark traveled, that the God, Moses would say, travel ark and do away with all of our enemies. These 2 sentences are a book in themselves. What the meaning of this, why there had to be like this, what we can learn from this, we'll talk about this in a moment. But let's just look at some very strange things. If we say, right, there's this opinion that says that this is a book in itself. If so, everything that comes after this is also a book, right? It's also a book. The book of Numbers is divided into 3 books. So the beginning of Numbers is one book. These 2 sentences is a second book. And everything that comes after this in the book of Numbers is another book. If so, it comes out, according to that the third book, which is in the book of Numbers, is all bad. It's just all bad stuff. After in general, there's a lot of bad things that happen, but you don't have to begin the book with it. Beginning a whole book with on a negative note, starting the day, that's usually not done in Judaism. If you want to say this bizarre thing that these 2 sentences are a book in themselves, which that's what it says, there's opinion like that in the Gemara, in the Talmud. So if so, there comes out a lot of very strange things coming, and one is negative things. Immediately after this, these 2 sentences, which you say constitute one book, it starts off on a bad note. The Jewish people are complaining, and all of a sudden God sends a fire and he eats them up. What were they complaining about? They always found something to complain about. The Jewish people, they were complaining that they were in the desert. They were complaining that they didn't like the manna, and they were complaining about Moses. They found something to complain. They just were complaining. Sometimes they're just complaining because the Jewish people like to complain. And then after that comes another bad thing. What comes? Miriam says that Miriam spoke against Moses. And then after that, next week, we'll see it came the sin of what's called the spies. The Jewish people refused to go into the land of Israel. One bad thing after the other. You can see that Shebakal is for him that all the books have a name. Usually the name Nilkach Me'ateva Rishona. Usually the name of each one of the books of the Torah is taken from the first word in the Torah. The non-Jews gave it different names, but here, for instance, the non-Jews called the book of Bereshit Genesis. Okay, why they want to do it is up to them. But the fact of the matter is the book is called Bereshit. The first word in the book of Genesis is Bereshit, and Jewish people, they call it Bereshit. The second book, the non-Jews, they call it Exodus, but that's not what it's called. It's called Shmot. That's the first word, Eila Shmot. These are the names. The third book is called In the Desert, Bamidbar. Bamidbar. The non-Jews call it Numbers. Okay, there's also an opinion in Judaism, also called Pekudim, but it's called no because that's the first word. Usually it goes after the first word. And the Sefer Bereshit, that's the first word. Shmot, that's the first word. Vayikra, right? Not Leviticus, that's called Vayikra. That's the first word there. Bamidbar, Dvarim, all the 5 books of Moses are called on the name of the first word or the second word, whatever, that appear in the Torah portion. So if so, we'll have to call the second. Now we're saying that there's 7 books of the Torah. The book of Numbers is divided into 3. So if so, the first book we'll call Numbers, or In the Desert, according to Judaism, Bamidbar. The second will be called Vayihi bin Soharon. Good thing. That's what it said. This 2-sentence book will be called when the ark traveled in the desert. But now we have a third book. This third book of the book of Numbers, the third, right, which we're saying now makes a new book. So if so, we'll have to call it by the name of Mitonanim, the complainers. We never find anywhere that it's called that. Nowhere ever is this third book referred to as Mitonanim, the complainers. But even more, Adarab, exactly the opposite. The first word in this book, the Bears is talking about something that's bad. The Ad, Shekal Teva, that every word in itself shows on something not good. Vayehi ha'am mit'ananim. That's the first words, first 3 words in this new book that we just say by dividing things up, dividing the book of Numbers into 3. So we're saying this third book starts off with 3 negative words. What are the words? Vayehi ha'am mit'ananim. Vayehi, it says any place where it says Vayehi, it's always something bad. Vayehi b'yamei Achashverosh. It's always trouble for the Jewish people. Vayehi means it's a sign that what's going to come after is going to be something not good. Ha'am, the Jewish people are called Ha'am, the people. Ha'am is usually Rishoyim. When the Jewish people are called Ha'am, not Am Yisrael, Ha'am. Jewish people refer to the Am This is referred to people that are sinners. And the third word, Kemit Onanim, for sure, it's not a good thing. It shows that the Jewish people were complaining. It says Kemit Onanim Ra Be'enei Hashem, that they were complaining bad things in the ears of God. This is the opposite of what the Torah says. The main principle of the Torah is that what a person should not complain. A person is supposed to bless on what he thinks is bad, just like he blesses on what he thinks is good, because the fact is that everything is good that comes from God. So if so, what's this idea that the whole book is going to be called because the Jewish people were complaining that they didn't like the manna or whatever it was they were complaining? Complaining is not supposed to be a Jewish thing, even though Jewish people love to do it. But it's not supposed to be a Jewish trait. And for sure it shouldn't be in the Torah. You're going to call a whole book of the Torah now? You're going to call a whole book, you're going to call the complainers, Kamit Onanim. Number two, usually the Torah is divided into five books. What is pushing them to push the seven? But who says you have to make seven? What's this big deal about seven? Leave it at five. Yeah, it's such a big thing. You have to divide. First of all, it's not the main opinion. Nobody agrees with you, this opinion. I mean, it's a valid opinion. It certainly is a valid opinion. The opinion was made by valid, and obviously it's based on some Kabbalistic principles or some sort of a principles. But the fact is, what do you have to do it for? What does this contribute to Judaism? 5 books is also a valid opinion, and that's the majority opinion. And what difference does it make if it's 5 or 7? You have to come and change things. What's what? In general, the Torah is divided into 5 books of the Torah. Why all of a sudden you have to have 7 books of the Torah? What is motivating you to make this change? Gimel. The Rebbe is asking, this is almost like a rhetorical question, because of course there must be a reason, and we want to see what it is, but it must be something very strange, because it's not understandable. Gimel. This we say from since if you want to divide up this book of Numbers into 3 books, okay, Mimenu comes out that the whole Torah comes out to 7 books. And where does this big change happen? In this Torah portion that we're reading now, there must be some sort of a connection between them, that this new division, we want to make this canal, whatever, go in the middle of Midbar, divide the thing into 3 really. Why in this Torah portion? We could do it any Torah portion. Why does it have to be here? Must be some connection. But Pashto, simply, we could say the connection between them is understood because the menorah, this Torah portion talks about lighting the candles. This is attached to the idea of the Torah. Hashem, just like the Balot Chatanero, just like lighting the candles, Murkav, the candles have 7 Nerot. Kach, also the Torah is divided into 7 books. That's pretty good. The menorah has 7 branches, so let's make the Torah also into 7 branches. This corresponds to the 7 branches of the menorah, and that's this week's Torah portion. So if you're going to divide the Torah into 7 instead of 5, so this is the Torah portion to do it in, because there's a big hint at the number 7. Says the Rebbe, but it has to be more than just this cosmetic thing that externally this is 7 and this is 7. There has to be a deeper reason behind it. How is this fitting to divide the Torah from 5 into 7? Okay, so again, the Torah is here to teach. The word Torah means to teach. The fact that there is an opinion, and a valid opinion, that the Torah should be divided into 7 books, not 5 books. And this division occurs in this Torah portion that we're learning this week. And how does it happen? That we take 2 sentences, from this Torah portion, and we say this, we remove them from this, and we say they're a separate book. You leave them where they are, but this is a separate book. This is a separate book. So now everything that comes before that in the book of Numbers, that's one book. And these two sentences are another book. And everything that comes after that is a third book. Right? So now we have 7 books of the Torah, and now we're happy. Why? Why? What's the point? What is it coming to teach us? It must be coming to teach us something very important. This is not just a scholarly thing, and just a, nitpicking. Let's do it this way, let's do it that way. The Jews always have to have different opinions, right? They always have to be, it says 2 Jews, 3 opinions. That's the reason why. They're expressing something about God, expressing something about how to serve God. The humans that we can understand, according to what? Let's understand, first of all, the content of this week's Torah portion in general. You do it like it's known, Torah, everything in the Torah is the language of teaching. Every detail in the Torah comes to teach a Jew in his service. In addition to the Torah being a history book, which is true, and in addition to the Torah being a religious book to tell us what to do in our religion, how to do the rituals or whatever, that's also true. And it gives us the command. But in addition to that, it's coming to tell us how to connect our soul and our action, speech, and thought to the creator of the universe, to serve God. This is a teaching to serve, to recognize, to be devoted to be enthusiastic about God. And especially in Yinim Kashurin to Avoda, the Mishkan, especially talking about when we're talking about serving in the tabernacle. That every single Jew is serving God in the tabernacle, because every single Jew is a tabernacle. Like it says, God said, make me a holy temple or holy place, and I will dwell inside of them, not inside of it, not just inside of it, but inside of them, inside of each and every Jew. Jews are here to serve God, like the holy temple. One of the most outstanding, striking services of God in the temple was the lighting of the menorah, Palot Chatanerot in the Mishkan. This is generally the service of every single Jew to serve God. That's what we learned in the Maimer in the morning, serving God. The menorah is the Jewish people. First of all, even though that this sentence of Ba'alotcha, so in other words, the Torah is coming to tell us something that we would never know if the Torah wasn't coming to tell us. We would never dream of it, that we have to serve God. We have to serve God. And we're not thinking about, is God going to serve us? Our thing is to be totally devoted to God and to serve God and to change the world, to fix the world, correct the world. And in order to do it, we have to correct ourselves and not thinking about any remuneration. We have to flame up. We're flaming up to God, burning the oil. We're not thinking about getting more oil. Even though that this Balot Chav, lighting the candles, this is like everything in the Torah. There is many, many explanations. There's 600,000, it says, explanations to the Torah. Shishim Riboy. There's 600,000 explanations to the Torah, according to Pshat. And there's another 600,000 according to Remez, Drush, Sod. Right? The Torah's facets to it, genuine facets, not people that make up all sorts of false ideas. Hari Lakal Rosh, Yeshna Pirush Apashut, Al Derech Pshat. That's what's the simple meaning. Let's talk about the simple message of the Torah. Hashayach Lakal Echad, which is relevant to every single Jew, man, women, and children. And this is the whole thing of what Rashi says. And that's the whole importance of learning Rashi. Rashi says, I only came just to explain the simple meaning of the Torah. Hamuvan afilu leben chamesh, which will explain things even to a 5-year-old child. Rashi says that everything in Rashi, the Rashi is Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki. Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki. He lived 900 years ago. So he's like the foremost explainer of the Torah. You can't really learn the Torah properly unless you learn his explanation. There's also others, and a lot of times they disagree with it, Rashi also, which, these are great, Ramban especially. That's a good, we said there's 600,000 explanations of different sentences, but Rashi is the how do you say, he's the beacon. He's like the center. Everybody around him, right? You can disagree with him, you can find new ideas with him, etc. But Rashi is the center. Good. So that's what Rashi says, is that Rashi comes to explain the simple meaning of the Torah. So from this, it's understood that the Torah, which the word Torah means teaching, in every single Jew has to be lilmod me'apirush pashat. First of all, you have to understand, how can we learn? What can we learn from the simple meaning of Rashi on the sentence that's explained to every single Jew? And then from this, we can understand what's relevant to every single Jew, men, women, and children, also in the beginning of his service of God, even before he reaches higher levels of serving God, love and things like that. Let's just quickly, on the word balotcha, Rashi says, al shem sha'alahav. Why is it called bahalotcha? Why does it say bahadlikcha when you light? This is a weird word. When you light the lights, it says when you raise up the lights. You raise up the lights. Rashi says that the word raise up the lights, the candles, right, the flames. It says because the flame has to go up, raise up, it has to go up on its own. And it has to go up. It has to be that the flame don't leave the match until the flame is independent. It goes up on its own. That we have to learn something about. What are we going to learn? General service. We're going to go over this again, God willing, tomorrow. Lighting the candles, in general, this is the service of every Jew to serve God. Lighting the lights, which is called Ner Hashem Nishmasad. Now, we see this is a very interesting thing. We see the Jews, non-affiliated Jews, whatever, Reform Jews, and Reconstruction Jews, whatever, but they're very, very, how do you say, you say the word, you're not a Jew. Oh, all of a sudden that lights them up. That lights them up because they are Jews. That lights them up. What are you talking about, not a Jew? You're not a Jew. You're going to tell me this. All of a sudden it's so excited about his Jewish identity. Why? What's the big deal? What's the big deal? Even the big Zionists, right, that they were against Judaism and wanted to wipe out Judaism, right? Still down deep, if you got them in this, I'm a Jew just like you, or you're the... You see that lights up a Jew. The fact there's something of that, and that's somehow or other signifies the essence of what a Jew is that it goes up. It's excitement, lighting. That's the says that the lamp of a God is the soul of man. That's the whole idea of a Jew serving God. That's the idea of the menorah. It says ner mitzvah v'torah or. It says the commandments are like a lamp and the Torah is the light. And by means of this, we shine. Ta'irit kol mitziyoto. You can illuminate the whole entire world around us. Your body, your part in the world, all of your deeds will be for the sake of heaven, and all of your ways you will know Him. And then you can also inspire others that are around you. People around you realize there's a God that's creating them. They're not alone. Until you can actually illuminate the whole entire world. That's why the Jewish people are called Ner Mitzvah Torah. They want to illuminate the world. Even Jews that get confused, they're in the whatever it's called, the communists, or the what are they called? BSD or something like that. The anti-Zionist, anti-this, but they want to do it because they want to improve the world. A Jew wants to improve the world. And with this is a light that attaches. The word of mitzvah is from attachment. Mitzvah tzavta. You attach the physical world with the Creator, the creation to the Creator, so to speak. In a way, that the world becomes healthy. The world becomes a dwelling for God. The world becomes illuminated. Menorah me'ira shadolechas me'ira be'or Eloki, that the whole world becomes like a lamp for God. That's the job of the Jews, is to illuminate, so to speak, to take the world out of its blindness. That's why the Jews are compared to a menorah. What's this got to do with dividing the Torah, the Torah into 7 portions instead of 5? We'll find out about that, God willing, next week. Now let's do the Yom Yom. All right, this is how the Kohanim say. All right, there's part of the prayers outside of Israel. They only do it on Musaf of the holidays, but some places in Israel they do it every day even. And that the Kohanim stand in front of the crowd, they put a talus over their head, and they bless the people. And these are some of the details. Well, we can go over it quickly. When the Kohanim, they're facing the crowd, right? And okay, now if you're a Kohen, this is what you're supposed to do. You give the blessing of the Kohanim. That was last week's Torah portion, right? Last week's Torah portion. Hashem v'yishmerecha. So it says your face should be facing the people. Then you say Hashem, you turn to the right. And then when they say Yishmerecha, they face forward again. When they say your ear, you turn your head to the left, etc. In other words, you're facing the Kohanim. When they give a blessing, you are receiving the blessing. You're supposed to turn your head. So you turn your head first. Every word you turn right, then middle, then left, then middle, then right, then middle, then left, middle. That's how you. Okay, this is today. I think we did not do yesterday, so let's just do yesterday's quickly. 1 minute. Yeah. The Baal Shem Tov passed away on Wednesday, the first day of Shavuot, and he is buried in the city of Mezebuz. The Alter Rebbe said that in Petersburg on the fourth day, because he passed on Wednesday is the fourth day of the week, the luminaries, the lights were taken away. It says God made the moon and the sun. It says on the fourth day, it says that he hung them. Nitlu, menorahs, but nitlu means to be hung, but also means to be removed. It says on that day, that the light of the world was removed. Have a good day with Moshiach. Now, God willing, at 3:00, we'll learn Chumash with Rashi. Thank you for coming.